So the first thing you will need in order to solve a problem is find a problem, which means you might be working on something and you think, wow, I can't believe I'm spending this much time on this. This is usually a beautiful sign because it tells you that you can do something better with your time. And that should inspire you to open Claude and talk to it. This is how a prompt would usually look like. It is one prompt where you dump all the context in, and it is structured as follows. So we start with a mission. This is like a North Star for your project because it needs to know what is the end goal that you're trying to achieve. If it doesn't know what you're trying to achieve in the long term, it will not do the thing. So an example would be, hey, I want to make a web app that sorts my content into folders automatically. I hate doing it. This is always the first step, a mission statement. What are we trying to do? If you want to spend less time editing, hey, I want to build a tool that helps me save time when editing. That is the mission. That is the bottom line objective. Now, the next thing you're going to do is the context. The context can be super messy and unclean, but you just yap as much as you can about how you got into the issue, how you work usually, just as much information as possible, because it's not as much about prompting anymore as it is about context. Who has the best context? So in that case, just run down mentally what you usually do in order to accomplish it manually. That is an important point and maybe the longest brick of your prompt. Yeah, so you would say, hey, I rename and drag the files by hand. I open it, look at the first few frames, and if it's that type of shot, it's that. If it's that, if I see kind of the product only, it's a product shot, and so on and so forth. Take your time, and I would strongly encourage you to download Whisperflow as a desktop app, because then you can just talk and it prompts for you. The reason why Whisperflow is better than just the voice dictation in Claude is that it actually learns from your filler words, the words that you use. So for example, if you use "Hey Jen," it might take it down as Holland or something. Who knows? Either way, if you correct it once after talking it, it will save "Hey Jen" as a term and just be more accurate. That's what you want. So yeah, Whisperflow for the context. And then number 3 of the prompt would be the requirements. You can imagine it as the Michelangelo statue. Okay, the mission is the need to build it. The context is the block of marble that you're getting, high quality as much as you can, so your project fits inside. And the requirements is you chipping down at the marble so that it becomes what you actually want to use. So requirements kind of narrow down your own solution. So for a content sorter, for example, it would be, hey, I don't want to upload all the files. Hey, I don't want to spend more on it than 10 minutes. That is all a requirement. Another requirement would be it needs to work from Slack. I don't want to have a separate app. That could be a requirement, but just be honest on usability. Shoot for the stars in the mission, but be realistic in the requirements. You want to reduce friction as much as possible. And then you have to state what kind of output you're expecting. And in that case, you might want to write a spec. Oops. So the output is basically just, okay, what are you expecting when Claude is done? Usually you prompt Claude and it takes a while. And afterwards, you want to read it over, or you want the finished tool. If you're building a tool, I would recommend to write a spec. And a spec is basically just a specification of what you're building, basically a product requirement doc, the PRD, if you will. But that is something that Claude usually really likes to do. Spec is the word for writing a plan before you start building a tool. That way you have way less mistakes, and it will most likely work the first time, and then I just build it. So yeah, this is super important. If you are not as technical, I would also recommend that you ask for recommendations before writing a spec, right? So output part, if you are pretty determined on the output that you want, hey, I want a spec for like a web app that does this and that, do that. But if you're unsure, if you've never built something, it might be the best if you ask it, hey, I want you to brainstorm with me and find solutions that I might not know about for the problem I'm describing. Totally possible to do that as well. And that would be a second way it could go. So either a spec for the tool that you're envisioning, or suggestions on how to solve the problem, which you can write a spec afterwards. Same thing, really. As long as you stay in one session, it will keep the context. So yeah, mission statement opens. Okay, I want to find a way to sort my content as quickly as possible. Bam. And then the requirement would be, it has to run locally. I don't want to upload stuff, that type of stuff. Okay, everything that narrows it down. And from the requirements, it will kind of decide for you what you're going to go for. Let me look at the app. Okay. Yeah, you don't need to know how technology works. You just need to be able to describe what you're trying to solve and have taste for how you like to work. So just be honest with the tool that will lead you to the best option automatically. Yeah. What are some ways to fix this? And it can also suggest like multiple choice. Hey, if you like something local, I might suggest a desktop app. Okay. And yeah, we had that output naming, build me a spec before we start building. Spec is a good word because Claude has an internal spec skill, I believe, that it can then fire. PRD is also a good word for it. Yeah. Okay, so one more thing about the spec. It will deliver you a document that is technical. It might mention scary words, right? Or EXIF. What is EXIF? What is Python? You don't need to know about that, but you will need to read over the spec. So if the spec as a document is too technical, the building plan is too technical for you and you can't really approve it, just ask it to break it down. Your approval doesn't need to understand that. Yeah, so you can prompt Claude once you receive the spec. You can tell it, hey, I don't know what that means. Can you please make me validate the spec without technical knowledge by asking me multiple choice questions? And then it will basically just send you, hey, should I keep your originals untouched and only move copies? Yes or no? That's something I understand. This is the technical version, and this is the one that it will give you in normal human talk. So then, any questions about the spec topic? Awesome. Act 2 would be the build and verify. From here on, if you say go, right, if you say go, it is approved. So the spec is clear. That becomes your building plan. It will then run for a while, most likely like half an hour or so, depending on how complex the solution is. and it will give you the software to try, most likely within the Claude app. Then it becomes very important that you actually try out the feature and give feedback. You just have to be a good user for the software to build a new software. So what does it do? Watch the folders. Yeah. So one feature might be watching the new folders for new files. So it says, hey, set of features. You go in, you move a file into the desktop folder, you run through the system, and you just describe out loud what your impression is. Yeah, and as I mentioned, Whisperflow is super convenient because you can hit the dump drum, or when you're prompting, I see it as, wait, does it show that? Yeah, you can lead the prompt with a one-liner, like I'm testing now, fix everything that I complain about, and then you can just go off in transcription. So you basically just hit FN and space in Whisperflow, talk out loud afterwards, and it will have this one line that you've written, I'm testing now, please fix everything that I complain about. And then you just, okay, this feels a bit clunky. I'm noticing that, it doesn't give me visual feedback. I don't know if it's working or not. This can be as stupid as possible. The simpler the language, the better even. You just have to give QA. And then you send that prompt, and it will fix everything that didn't work. And that way you can slowly dig through a software and kind of validate it, right? You can test it, and you might come up with a new feature for it or a new way to prompt. Totally yours, but this way you basically just compact a process that took software agencies months into this one afternoon that you're struggling with a problem. That opens up all kinds of possibilities, mainly that you just switch from being an editor into being a how would I call that, just a user. You as the user are able to create software to use. I build like 2 SaaSes a month just by that, and I forget about them. But this way, if you do one job consistently, like editing videos, you will find friction points. You will find situations where you think, I really don't like doing this. And this is what should inspire you to build something that does that for you. And you will get better as you go along. And the last thing I would like to mention about the theoretical part of this is to just think in 10 extra outputs. We will transition to a business model where one person will do more and more while spending less and less time on it. Tim, for example. Tim used to see the boards of clients, and he used to find cards that are open, see like, oh, who is currently available, who is online, and then ask them by hand, hey, do you have time for a card this evening? And then I would say, oh, maybe, I don't know, I might squeeze it in. And the next day he would realize he didn't do anything, and then he would just drop it. And then he would reassign it. It's a lot of time. It's a full-time job. That's why people have project managers. But Tim now has a dispatcher that basically I built it for him. I built him a dispatcher so that he doesn't have to do that anymore. And also because I noticed he got overwhelmed. So I pretty much just built him the agent to like 95%. And the reason, the way I built the dispatcher was, I just went to Claude and I said, hey, let's build something automatic to save project management time or save Tim's time, or it distributes project automatically. Then I context dumped everything about the process. So I went through the mission, what I just said. Then in context, I went through the procedure. Hey, normally when a card comes into next up in Trello, we look who's open. We have an Airtable sheet with, who is on vacation or whatever, who's not available. I usually just look at that. I see who did good work in the past. I usually check by doing this, this, and that. And I context dump the whole thing. And I said requirements would be that it runs without us. We don't want to manually kick it off. It has to live outside of Claude. It needs to be able to improvise whenever it is, nothing gets responded. If nobody responds to a card, what should it do? It needs to think about that. And it needs to, we need to be able to see what it does. So then it came up with a dispatcher, which is basically just Tim, but quantifiable. We want to search for quantifiable solutions. And now Tim can pretty much handle way more while doing way less. And he still has the same incentives. He still gets his partial share per card delivered, right? He still has, he can still invoice it. It's not like the agent took his job or something, but he's driving the agent. He has to drive the agent. Even if I wanted to replace Tim, I would need to take care of the agent, and I don't want to because it also takes time. Tim knows the project management better than I do, and he will drive that agent. But notice how Claude suggested the solution for my context of the job and my requirements. So as long as you're smart enough, you might come into a position where you can deliver videos automatically and don't even have to work. You can still bill me for it because I'm paying you to get the job done, not for you to sit on a chair while I watch you on a webcam and make sure that your hours are logged. No, I pay you for a certain deliverable. We agree on a price, we agree on rules. How you get it done is optional, and I don't even take it personal if you automate it. That's even better than doing a manual because it happens instantly. So much better. So reframe how you think about it. And this is the reason why I have the 10x thing on screen. The only way how you will get to good solutions in software is by thinking, hey, how can I do 10 times of the amount of cards that I currently do? So count the cards that you invoiced last month. Take that by 10 and then think, okay, how can I even do that? How could I possibly do 10 times the cards? And you will come up with a solution if you think about it long enough. The problem that most people make is that they just don't think about it. They think, oh no, it's not possible. But we're pretty much doing exactly that on a monthly basis, where I think, hey, if we're getting 12 new clients, Tim will die. He will just drown in tasks to do. We will not be able to take their money. And what happens when that happens? We can pay less people and we can hire less people. When everybody damn well knows a remote job where you can make money is a beautiful thing, and we want to spread it to as much people as possible. So main mantra, look for solutions, think about, if something annoys you, just think about how can I make 10 times of that in less time? What would need to happen? Your system, and then you have to paste them into Claude or into Kling, click run, and do it all over again. So you can always adapt it, hopefully, but main thing is that you build something, because just like sending the first 2 prompts that we talked about will get you 85% there, and from there on out is just you being the boss. You being the boss to the software, Claude being the software developer. It's so much fun. Okay, one thing that we can do while we think of friction points is you need to download the Claude desktop app. Just look up on Google Claude desktop, I believe. This one, and you download it for macOS, or I think you should have a Mac. It also has Windows and Linux, just in case. But either way, the Claude desktop app is nice because it gives you the Claude code session. Yeah, and bring one annoyance into it.